This is Tracy Drummond, archivist for the Southern Labor Archives in Atlanta, Georgia, at Georgia State University. I'm here today with Roger Hare. We're going to be doing an interview on behalf of the archives of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. Today is the 27th day of July, 2014, and we are in South Portland, Maine. Good afternoon. Good morning. I guess it's still
Good
morning
morning.
here. How are you today?
I feel pretty well.
Good, good. So we'll just start our interview and get started with some questions about your background, your history. Where were you born and when?
I was born in northern Maine, in a little in Holton, Maine. In another month, it will be 87 years ago.
Okay, okay. So you were born on September 27th of 1927.
August 27, 1927.
Okay. And so tell me a little about Monticello. That's
a town that we were lived in.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about Monticello.
It was a very small town, probably 1,300 people. I'm guessing that is probably about what it is today, because very few people move around up there. My father worked as for the state as a highway patrol, maintenance patrol, and my mother was a housewife. They were divorced when I was 13 years old, and I went 8.5 years or 8 years of school in the town of Monticello. After my parents were divorced, my mother moved to Holton, which is only 16 miles south. She was employed by one of the local doctors as a housekeeper. And lost it for a minute. I went 3.5 years to Holton High School. I worked 2 of those years at the Holton Theater as a film rewind person and cleaning of the projection room. When I left there, I worked a very short period of time driving truck on Prescott Air Base. Leaving there, I went to the sanatorium at the age of 17 years old, stayed 2.5 years, left the...
Well, let's back up to your first job at the theater.
Yes.
Did you get a job so that you could have spending money, or were you trying to help out around the house, or
no,
was it just...
the first apartment that we lived, the only apartment that we lived in Holton, there was a lovely, lovely family that lived on first floor. We lived on second floor, and the family had 3 sons, and at that point, all 3 sons was in the military. At that point, my mother went from Holton, Maine, to Portland, Maine, to work in the shipyards. And I say that this lovely family decided to keep me on, kind of, as I would say, as a kind of a replacement for the 3 sons that were in the military. And they were just unbelievably good to me. I stayed there until, as I said, the truck driving, and from there is when I left for the sanatorium. I got up one morning and had pleurisy in my chest. Went instantly to the hospital, and the hospital sent me directly to the sanatorium,
Okay.
which happened to be in southern Maine because we only had 3 sanatoriums in the state of Maine, and that was the only open bed at that time.
And again, I'm sorry. Let me back up one more time. What you said your mom left to go to work on a shipyard in Portland.
Yeah, South
What-
Portland actually.
South Portland. What work would they have had for a woman in a shipyard?
They had, as a matter of fact, more women in the shipyard as welders and.
Okay, so it was during the Second World War.
Yes.
Okay. So was your mom a welder?
No, my mother was some sort of a wagon to move steel around and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Had a little cart, and
Okay.
she drove around.
Okay. Well, and you said your next job was driving a truck.
No, the driving the truck was before. I was driving the truck at the time it was discovered that I had tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis.
That was the last job that I had
Okay.
until I left the sanatorium and went to.
And you said that was in southern Maine?
Well, it
Santa-
was 60 miles from Lewiston, and Lewiston is about 35 miles from Portland, I guess. So if that's a description.
Okay. And what was it like there?
I was just about ready to tell you one of my favorite stories that probably very few people will believe. When I went into the sanatorium, they had a women's wing on one side, men's wing on the other. I had a room, one wall was exposed to the outside. In other words, it was an end room. And my mother, having Saturdays off or Sundays off, she would come up to visit with me, which was probably a 50-mile drive at that time. And we had had a real bad snowstorm that night before with high winds because we were up on, they called it Greenwood Mountain, and the sand was on the top of this mountain. And when she got there and come down to my room, we had individual rooms, and it was like French doors that was covered the full width of the room itself. She had to wait for the maintenance people to come in to shovel the snow away from, which included under my bed, snow, in order to get the doors closed so she could visit.
And why did you keep the doors open again?
It was tuberculosis at that time had no form of medication. It had to be strictly bed rest. Of the 2.5 years there, I spent a little over 365 days by getting out of bed once a day while the nurse changed the bed. Other than that, I could not get out of the bed for any reason. I mean, that was their rule.
Right.
And another interesting story, there's one that was hard to believe, was they used to use canning jars or sealers, the glass containers to prepare the summer harvest so that they could have vegetables and so on and so forth in the winter. I have laid in bed and watched one of those jars break from the frost.
Really?
Really.
Wow.
And I survived that one because my uncle bought me at that time it was. It wasn't an insulated. I don't know what it was, but anyway, it was a special suit that I wore that kept me from freezing to death. I guess.
Because that was my next question. How did you stand it with all the cold air coming
Well,
in?
the only time that we could have the doors closed was when we didn't have visitors or mealtime. They would close the doors sometime, maybe an hour and a half prior to a meal, because the corridors were so hot. I mean, they would keep the corridors probably 85 or 90 degrees. I'm just guessing that, because when they opened the doors, you could just feel the rush of heat coming into the room. But it was quite an experience. I love to tell this story for the simple reason that when they took my mother, when my mother and my grandmother took me to the sanatorium, the doctors informed them that they would be shipping me home within 3 months in a casket. And this was the time of the World War and Second World War, and the Americans had freed a number of Russian Jews from or German Jews from the imprisonment, and they let some of them come into the state of Maine. We had 4 doctors. 3 of them were Jewish doctors that come over under this whatever terms that they used to bring the prisoners, the Jewish prisoners, into the United States. And the elder spokesman of the group was assigned to give me pneumothorax. Pneumothorax is when they put a needle in, and they get into between your inner lung and the lung itself, and they put in air to collapse the lung. And this, in my opinion, is what saved my life. The doctor made a bad mistake. Instead of 50 cc's, he gave me 500 cc's.
That's a big difference.
And it showed in the discharge that I would have through the mouth. I just raised all kinds of phlegm for 2 days. And I had pretty good care for those 3 days, because that was enough. If I had had probably a little bit more serious or a different spot, the doctors have said that would have been the end, because it would just blown the lung apart. But it didn't blow it apart, and as I said, I'll never forget that doctor. He was so kind and gentle, but made a mistake.
But for the better, perhaps.
Well, I hope to say it was better. I didn't like the alternative at that time.
Right. Well, how you couldn't have been more than 20 at that point.
That was when I was discharged. I went in I can't remember. It seems to me it was in August of whatever year, and I don't remember the year. But I went in August, and I get out in the spring of 2.5 years later, anyway.
Okay. Well, how did you occupy, if you had to stay in the bed all day, just laying there, how did you occupy your time?
Well, they gave credit to the extent that my body was so abused or so deteriorated that I was practically a vegetable. And because of the good care, there was nothing they could do except keep me warm and feed me. So, but they did a great job at doing that. I When I was awake, my uncle had bought me a shortwave radio, and at that point in time, they started the first, lost it that quick, a veterans, like a veterans network, giving different from news from families and so on and so forth. It was supposedly strictly a veterans station. And it would run 24 hours a day. So with the military band, I had all copies of all of the comedians, for an example, that was on the air at that time, and I survived it quite well.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't, never shed a tear as a 17-year-old being penned up, because I just accepted that I had to have it, and that was it.
Right.
And I truthfully can say that I never thought of being out of there.
Okay.
I just grew to adapt life as it was. And
So when they were getting ready to release you back into the world, were there any sort of rehabilitation steps that they took, or?
no, but that again is, I think, is an interesting story. I've already told you that my mother was working for a doctor in Hope, and my mother died 2 weeks before I was discharged from the sanatorium. And they
Had she been sick? Had she been sick?
she had ovarian cancer.
Okay.
They when they discharged me 2 weeks after her funeral, and I was able to go to that because my father come down and picked me up, and then he had to take me back, of course. But they give me a discharge, and I had to go to Portland in order to get a train to go to northern Maine. So I went to Portland and caught the midnight train out of Portland for Rooster County, and we had to change trains in Northern Maine Junction, and I was one of the first ones to get from one train to the other, and I took advantage of it. So I laid down with my head on the aisle seat. There was the guy with a real broad butt, and I don't know if I'm supposed to swear here, but I'll swear just a little.
You can do it.
He said, these goddamn fools, he says, getting aboard and going to sleep and taking up the seats and so on and so forth. And I never made a move, but all of a sudden I opened this right eye and I saw this angel coming. And that angel ended up to be, 4 years later, ended up to be my wife.
Really?
But the mystery to the story is that her family, mother, was in the Mercy Hospital with cancer, breast cancer. And my mother shared the room. She had ovarian cancer. And during the visitation of the two families, Mary knew every member of the family, but I was never mentioned.
Really?
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. If it was ever mentioned, it was kind of ignored because I was in a sanatorium with tuberculosis, and at that time it was probably 98%. It was that high of people that had returned, that when they come back, there was a pretty 98% chance they wouldn't leave.
Okay.
So anyway, when I got out of the, went to work, get out of the sand, went to work for the Maine Turnpike, and the some of the interesting, I think very interesting things that's happened in my life is, number one, meeting Mary. Number two, the doctor's mistake. Number three, getting a job on the turnpike because my grandmother lived next door to a second cousin of hers, which was a member of the Maine legislature at that time. And he and a gentleman, I lost his name and I thought I'd never forget it. He lived down in Kennebunk. So I went down, the cousin suggested that I go down and talk to this particular man in Kennebunk because the two of them had presented the bill to vote in the Maine Turnpike Authority. And the Maine Turnpike Authority was about the time that I was discharged. Well, as a matter of fact, they was preparing to get it open. But this was in I think it was in July or August that I was discharged. But I went down to the gentleman's house and made my plea that I would like to have a job. And he said, Roger, he says, we're only going to hire 30 people, and we got 313 applications. Now this was probably 4 or 5 months before the opening. So they also had the Maine forest fires. The only forest fires that I ever remember of was back in that particular year. I got ready to leave, and he left the room for a minute. And his wife offered me a piece of apple pie that she was making for the firefighters, and a glass of milk, and I was pretty starved to death and never had a penny in my pocket. So anyway, when it come time for me to leave after I'd finished my pie and milk, they both came to the door to wish me well. And I says, I want to apologize. And God only knows why I said this. I said, I'm carrying the greetings or best wishes from a very good friend of yours. Who's that? Lee Good. You know Lee Good? I said, yes. I said, he is my grandmother's second cousin, and they live side by side. So he said, well, come back in and sit down. And I got ahead of my story because the pie and the milk was during that interim period. So when I get ready to leave, he said, do you know where the Kennebunk Town office is? No. Gave me instructions on how to get there. And saw the individual that he told me to see. And he didn't tell me anything about the 313. But he gave me an interview anyway, and no application. So I went away pretty sad, needless to say, that I wasn't even going to be in the pool. So I went back to the sanatorium at this Lee Good's recommendation because I had to live with my grandmother. I didn't have any other home. And I was very happy there being with my grandmother, but then get back to your very first question is, how did you survive during that interim period when your health was supposedly returning and so on and so forth? So I went back through him to get back onto the turnpike. And about 3 weeks before the turnpike opened, I guess it was something like 3 weeks, I got a telephone call from my grandmother that, is it running out?
Nope.
From my grandmother wanting me to go to Kennebunk for training. Well, that's how I got involved in politics. I thought if two Republicans was going to give a Democrat when I was really young, so but I didn't like the Republican Party. But anyway, if two Democrats can do all of this all of a sudden, because I still hadn't filled out an application until the first week that I went to work. I filled out an application for the Maine Turnpike. But anyway, they just so many miracles seemed to happen to me all at the right time.
You had a lot of luck.
How much more do you want?
Well, I thought that would be a good segue into the actual work at the Turnpike. Like, what were your first jobs there? What were you making? What, you know?
I was making, I think it was $1.05 an hour.
Okay.
That was the pay of all toll collectors. They, at that time, they didn't have uniforms, but I understand that now they give a shirt or whatever for identification as a toll collector. It was really a great job for the simple reason that there wasn't a lot of traffic, but there was enough just to keep you awake. And the staff of the Turnpike, I'm talking about the managerial staff, could never have been any nicer than the ones that they had running the Turnpike when it opened. I was appointed as senior collector, and that gave me 10 cents more an hour. So
Okay.
now I was up to 15 cents.
So you would stand in the booth, and when cars passed, they would pay you.
They had tickets from the
Okay.
different toll houses. Wherever they entered would get a ticket, and they would return that ticket with the cash for the distance that they traveled.
Okay.
And
And you did that for 8 hours a day?
yes,
Okay.
except one day. We had, it was a 24-hour day. We had, I don't know, about 24 or 30 inches of snow. So all roads, needless to say, was shut down. The snowplows just couldn't take care of it. And that particular day, it was 24 hours. It took me about 3 hours to walk to work because I lived in Portland and had to go to Saco. And I'll never forget it because there was a state highway truck went past me 3 times, and the sucker wouldn't stop picking me up. But anyway, I walked the whole distance. It was only, I think it was 11 miles. But anyway, I walked 11 miles, got there and relieved the operator that had been working. And my replacement couldn't show up because he couldn't get his car out. So then I was stuck then.
Did you have a lot of traffic?
There was no traffic. The entire countryside was shut down, with the exception of the Highway Route 1.
Mm-hmm.
But the Turnpike itself, it took them. Well, I don't know how long it took them, but they was a fellow that had to shut his car down at. Because they wouldn't let him on the Turnpike, so he got a ride back home. He knew he couldn't drive back home. And a day and a half later, or the day later, I called him and asked him if I could drive his car home back to Portland. That's how I get back. On my way down, as I said, the roads were totally bare. Bare meaning as bare as they could be considering the amount of snow, but there was travel. But I can't think of anything else other than some of the experiences you would have with kids. Every car with a kid in it had to pay the toll.
Mm-hmm.
And at least, I'll be polite to them, there's at least 20% could hold the change and the other 80 couldn't. So but that really didn't bother me. I was so happy in life that nothing could have disturbed that.
So you enjoyed the work and saying
Well,
hello to people when they'd come through. You liked
you see, I
the
enjoyed the work because there was no manual labor that I could do, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
I had 3.5 years of high school, but that wouldn't have carried me very far because in Aroostook County they didn't have too many soft jobs such as in a grocery store. There's too many people unemployed even back in those days,
Mm-hmm.
so that it was just. Again, as I said, it was just a miracle in politics that I ended up with the job.
Mm-hmm.
But the second week, the executive director of the Turnpike, the very first night on the job I was working 12 to from 4 to 12, and needless to say, I had no car or no money or anything else. But this car pulled up to the toll house, and it happened to be this gentleman, and I won't use his name. Of course, he's since gone years ago. But anyway, he come in the toll house, and there's two of us there, my replacement, myself. He wanted to know who Roger Hare was, and I spoke up, and he says, "I'm going to take you down to your rooming house." Now, how he knew that I had a rooming house is God only knows. But otherwise, I would have had to have walked from the toll house probably 3 miles in order to get to the rooming house at midnight. And he did that for probably a week. And then he made comment that he, through his second in command, that told me that I was instructed to get a car or else. So I called my grandmother, or my grandmother actually called me, and wanted to know how I was doing, and I told her the story.
So
And
someone you had never met before, who had offered you a ride home a few nights, then told you that you had.
he was the top man of the Maine Turnpike Authority,
And he told you had to buy a car.
because he wasn't going to transport me.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because as I said, for a whole week, 5 days, he came and picked me up at 4 o'clock, and drove me to the Red Shutter Inn in Saco. I forgot where I was going with the rest of
You were
this.
talking to your grandmother?
Oh yes, and I told her the story, and the next telephone call I got was, when can you get off to get your car? It was probably 2 days later. Well, my grandfather had ordered a Chevrolet car, and those days they had just started making cars again. They shut down during the war and went making war materials. So he wanted a club coupe, which he ordered, but he didn't want any seat in back. He wanted that space for hauling junk around or whatever. So he told the salesperson that he didn't want the car, he was going to take the next one. The guy says, "Oh, you're not taking the next one. If you want your name put back on the waiting list, we'll do that for you." Well, he says, "I don't want that damn car." So it ended up that my grandmother was working at an IGA store in Monticello.
And what's an IGA store?
Independent grocers.
So it's a grocery store.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anyway, a fellow that I worked for summers as a kid, I mean real young, I used to drive truck in the potato fields as they were loading potatoes and spreading the empties and so on and so forth. And he was probably the wealthiest man in town at that time, and he really wouldn't have been today, but anyway, he asked my grandmother how I was doing, and she told him about the story. He took out a checkbook paid for the car. 3 years later, I signed a receipt to give to him because he requested it. I don't know why, but I had paid for the car. But anyway,
So he purchased it outright and let you pay him back for it over
Yeah.
3 years?
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredibly generous.
it is that. But the best I can say was I was a hell of a nice kid. I mean, people liked me, I guess, because as I said, there's just so many things that I never ever expected in life. All of a sudden, it was just, I really and truthfully needed it, but it was there. It never failed. Even that train ride home with my beautiful angel, everything that I needed or wanted in life, I somehow got it without begging for it or asking for it.
Wow.
It just seemed to fall into place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's move on to the next phase, because you were at the Turnpike Authority for 4 years, and then all of a sudden one day.
The second in command come down, and a very, very nice man, he treated all of the employees excellent. I mean, there was no reason why he shouldn't have. But he came in and didn't even bother to say hi. He said, I'm going to offer you 2 weeks vacation pay if you'll quit. And I said, no, I'm not going to quit. I have no reason to quit. So he just slammed the sliding door. There was aluminum doors with glass in them, and he left. And about a week later, this first man that I mentioned that drove me home for the hotel for a week, he came in. He offered me 3 weeks vacation with pay if I'd quit. So I said, why are you offering me money to quit? Well, did you sign a union card? And I said, yes. And
which union was trying to organize the Turnpike?
Teamsters.
The Teamsters, okay.
And I'll use his name because he's dead, but the only man in my life that I think I ever disliked, his name was Eaton, and lived in Sanford. And the way that he put it when he came in, as I've already said, I knew nothing about a union. And he says, there's 30 of you. He says, 29 of them has signed cards. He says, you're the only holdout. Well, I thought to myself quickly, gee, if the other 29 guys are so for the union, what in the hell am I going to hold out for? So I signed the card. And that's why that they offered me the money was to just get out of their sight, because they didn't want a union. And they have one now, by the way, but it isn't our union. So I just as I said, I up and quit. There was no reason that I could see working there under those conditions. And I didn't accept a penny of their payoff. I just said I'm resigning and walked off on the job without even a notice, other than the last minute I called on the boss and said that I'm done, get a replacement. But that was my first experience with unions right there. When I left there.
Why do you think the Turnpike was so against the union?
The what?
Why do you think the Turnpike was so against the union?
Why is any company against the union?
Okay.
They're against the union for the simple reason that they have total control. They can fire without challenge. They don't have to argue with anyone. When they say use the pot, you sit on it, and that's that's the way with life in a non-union operation. And that's why that when I did find out about the union and what the union was for, I just dove into it head over heels, because the only books that I ever read in my life, other than school books, was something about a union.
Really?
Yeah, and I can't tell you any union books that I read, but there's out there if you're interested in reading them. Go to the public library. When I went to work for Portland Copper, I had to start in for the first time in my life with on manual labor after having been in the sanatorium.
Mm-hmm.
And the first day home, as I said, my angel took good care of me.
Well,
My hands was raw from using shovel.
Okay.
They were so tender that there was no skin left on my hands.
And this was at the Portland Copper Tank Works.
Yeah.
That was the job you took. How long was it between quitting your turnpike job and starting this job?
Probably 3 days.
Okay, so it was easy to find work.
Well, I'll have to say easy to find work, with the exception of the guy that did the hiring at Portland Copper was a very, very close friend of my wife. That's the first time I ever said that. Rob was always my angel.
Mm-hmm.
So when just out of conversation on the street, he found out that I was unemployed.
Okay,
So he employed me.
that's great.
It was that simple. There again is what I'm telling you. It's how odd so many of these things come to fruition without begging. They came to me. I didn't go to them. But anyway, let's go on.
Okay, well, what was your first job there at the Portland Copper Tank Works?
Manual labor.
Manual labor, so just anything they needed done around the yard, or?
And it was they made septic tanks, oil tanks, the home type oil tanks, and they also made the undergrounds for service station. They made those large tanks like that. They had a number of different businesses they get tied into, and it was a very small company that started with 15 people, and all of a sudden, because of the needs of materials that they couldn't get during the war, and now steel was free for manufacturers. They went up to, I don't know, they probably at one time ended up with 500 people. Now they're out of business, but anyway,
Well, how long were you there? Well, you were about to tell a story about how your wife, you came home and you hadn't been doing that much manual labor, and your hands were all messed up. So finish that part of the story.
well, that was pretty much. If anyone I only mentioned that to the extent that I was so tender, or my hands, the skin or whatever, that the ending part of it that is, as far as I'm concerned, is when my wife did something really, really terrible to me. Unbeknowing, she got a bottle of alcohol and put it into the wash basin, and she called me. I was watching television or doing something other than paying attention to her at that point. And she got behind me, and when she grabbed me by both wrists, I says, "What are you doing this for?" Because I thought it was just nothing more than pure water, and she was soften them up, but she hardened them up real fast. Oh, I don't think that was the very worst pain that I ever had, but it most certainly was damn close to it.
Yeah, I imagine.
But I went to work the next day, and I have to tell you, I went back on the shovel.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that was the end of my pain. Was
Okay. Now, while you were at Portland Copper Tank Works, were you always just manual labor, or did you move into other jobs? over
Yes,
the years?
yeah,
Okay.
The department that I moved into was, as I said, the general labor within the yard. Then they needed a truck driver, so I ended up to be a truck driver. The jet engine parts, they had to move into Boston to have a treatment done, and then we'd haul it down, and then we'd haul another load back, and we just cycled around with the,
So it was like a dedicated run. It was
yeah,
the same place
yeah.
back and forth.
And then as they needed trailer loads, because then I get promoted up to a trailer driver. And the very first first trip out, the owner of the factory wanted me to move the trailer, which I had never sat in before, a tractor trailer. He wanted me to move the trailer outside the gate. And the gates were open, and I figured if I can get the cab through, the rest of it's going to come through. Well, it just so happened that it didn't. And I took one of these gates, and it was right next to the gatehouse, of course. And it drove one of those gates, the post on the gate, drove it right up through the roof of the guard shack. But I didn't get fired by it with it anyway. But it was some of the experiences because I probably should have. But I told him that I had never driven before. He just said, "Move it, move it." So I moved it.
Right. And was there anything else after truck driver that you did there?
Yeah, I became a licensed electrician.
Okay. Was there sort of an apprenticeship or training for that?
The change?
Apprenticeship or training for that?
Well, the answer, normally there would have been, but the president of the IBEW union happened to be our boss at the time, so he just gave me all of the training that I needed. He put me under his wing and showed me certain things, and I was actually a lead man under him. He had, I can't remember, 16 or 17 licensed electrician. It put me in as their boss, the lead person. I mean, they, when he wasn't around, they had to come to me for orders.
Okay.
But then I applied for my license and took the test and passed it the first time, and I let it go probably 5 years after I retired. I just didn't use it, so consequently I just gave it up.
Okay.
Didn't bother to pay for it.
Okay. So how long were you at the Portland Copper Tank Works before you were told to join a union, or you were asked to join a union, the union? Well, first, was it an open shop or a closed shop?
Close.
Closed. Okay.
That's why they told me that I had to belong to the union. So consequently, my first meeting is I've already explained that one to you. But
but you didn't. We didn't get that one on the recorder.
Oh, we didn't.
So So let's go through that one again.
The shop steward came to me on the second day that I was working at the plant, and he informed me that within a month I had to become a union member. And he explained that because it was a closed shop, I didn't have any choice. Either I was going to become a union member. Hell no, I don't know what unions are all about, but I just left one because we had a little bit of dispute. There was a turnpike. So I signed the card that he wanted and swore me in as a member. And that was what made me eligible to attend that first union meeting when the brother decided to give me a knock side of the head when it was time to vote. But and I never regretted it, and I have, with the International Union, there was so many people, just so many people, I'll say saved their jobs because I didn't know how in hell to fight for them, but I fought long enough to wear management down, and it ended up that way.
Mm-hmm.
But there's reasons that strong reasons why people should join unions. Now, they claim how corrupt they are and so on and so forth. Well, that's a lot of malarkey. There's some good unions. If there's bad ones, I haven't seen them. Mm-hmm. And I don't go out looking for them either. But
right.
The point that I'm getting at is that I came from what I consider was one of the better, IBAW, for an example. It was a great union. But
well, I think people always talk about unions being corrupt.
Yeah.
And they say that like the government isn't corrupt or like corporations aren't corrupt.
Yeah.
And if I am going to be part of a corrupt organization, I always say I want to be part of the one that's working for the working man and not the other ones. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's an argument that I hate too, because it's, number one, just not true, and it's just ridiculous.
Well, the one particular case, if you were interested in that, it's in there. It's pertained to an individual that made a bad mistake in a food plant. The plant was down, and I don't know if you was ever in a food processing plant. This happened to be peas, fresh peas. They keep the floor flowing water all the time. And the plant was down for cleaning, and the maintenance crew. Well, this maintenance guy decided that he had to be relieved, so he just unzipped his pants and was relieved, and he was caught by a supervisor and fired. Now, justifiably, he should have been gone. I mean, if I had to, if it hadn't been for the fact, I'll put it this way, if it hadn't been for the fact that I wasn't going to lose a case, I was going to at least go down trying. And I won this one, which after the case was won, believe me, that brother knew how I felt. And he kept apologizing, it was a mistake. But when we get to the arbitration table, there was the equivalent of a table like this, and then the union committee had to sit back, those that couldn't get at the table. And the arbitrator, for example, was sitting at that end of the table, and the company was sitting on this end of the table, and the union was on this side. And the company manager was sitting next to me. And the arbitrator asked who was going to represent, and we went through all of that rigmarole, and it was time for the union to present their case. And I kept looking over at taking a peek at the company's notes, and there was something that I had done myself at negotiations. As this matter or subject matter would change, I would start a new paragraph or a new, I'd draw down one line and continue to write on that particular issue. And as it changed, I just kept doing it. And the general manager of the plant, for some reason or other, he decided that he did the same thing as I did. So I said to the arbitrator, I'd like to see a copy of the company's notes. And the arbitrator gave me a real tongue lashing over that. Was none of my business at that stage, but I would eventually get it. So he says, let's bring this back into order again after he got done lecturing me. And then he said, by the way, I'm curious, what was there about the company's notes that you was interested in? And I said, I just happened to glance over and happened to notice that the company was doing what I do and probably you do, and that is every time there's a change of the next subject matter or whatever, it was always done by a space. And I says, it's very, very odd that his notes are written that way with the exception of just one addition. So he says to the manager, let me see your notes. He looked at the notes and he turned to the plant manager. Yeah, he says, that's a good point. He says, this is written even in different handwriting. The plant manager turned around to the superintendent, turned around to the company lawyer. The three of them were sitting there. Come on, you bastard. Don't leave me hanging out to dry. Union wins the case.
Wow. Wow. And what was the one thing that was different that was written?
I never did see it.
Oh, you never did see it. Okay.
I was so glad to get out of that room.
Uh-huh.
But as I said, I had my day with the union member.
Right. Right.
And oddly enough, I wasn't his boss, but he didn't give me any flack. He had his job back.
Yeah. He must have been. Yeah.
But well, I'm sure he isn't the first one. You know, there's always everyone makes stupid mistakes.
Right.
And I don't know if it was his stupid mistake or what it was, but he did it anyway, and it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But he was standing actually over the drain. But it could have been, 50 feet from the drain, and then it could have contaminated a lot.
Yeah.
But if any splatter there was, I mean, there was very little that I would guess that didn't go down the drain instantly, but that had no bearing. The fact that he did it was...
Well, the public indecency, I think, if nothing else, like...
Yeah.
That would have been... And so that would have been as your time as maybe a special rep or I mean, because that wasn't when you had just joined the union. That would have been later when you were president, maybe, or...
When I was what?
Well, the story you just told me about that arbitration case, if you were handling the arbitration, that wouldn't have been when you had just joined the union. That would have been later when you were...
Yes, I was. No, I was as soon as I got after that 6 months, and I decided to sleep through it and wait for. I was going to get up and did my normal day's work for probably a week and a half, and then I get the letter for the being appointed as a permanent Grand Lodge rep.
No, but when you first started, when you first started your job at Portland Copper Tank Works.
Oh, you're back there.
Yeah, because you moved ahead to arbitration case. So let's go back to Portland Copper Tank Works and talk about when you first joined the union. So it was a closed shop, and they told you how to join, and you said you went to your first meeting, and you've got and told us about that. So how did you? I asked you earlier if you had been a shop steward there, and you were never shop steward. You said that you were elected president after you'd been there 4 years, and you went straight from being a rank and file worker to being elected president. Why do you think your local And that was Local Lodge 1574. Why do you think your local had so much confidence in you?
Probably because I had a big mouth.
Aha, leadership.
And because there's one thing that my whole life I attempted to follow, and that was the task that was before me. If I had accepted it as a task, I was going to defeat it or die trying to defeat it. And that was the attitude that I took. I very, very seldom ever lost my temper. I raised my voice a couple of times, but it was just to override their running off at the mouth. It was time for me to butt in.
Okay. Well, what were some of the issues that you saw there? What were some of the issues that you spoke out about, or what were some of the issues that bothered you enough to run for president of your local?
If one of the things that bothered me more was if they decided to pull in a expert, for an example, after the, let's say, second or third meeting, they could considered as an expert, or they considered was going to shake my tree, and they had the management had enough knowledge of me and my ability to negotiate or fail to negotiate. So then they would pull someone else in off the street, such as their company attorney. And company attorneys, needless to say, they're paid very, very well, a lot better than probably the average street type attorney, whoever comes in his door. And because they have the capability of getting a tremendous salary, we had one that was a real sleazebag. Again, I'm not going to mention his name because he's dead. And I thank God for taking him, because he hurt more people than he helped.
Really?
I got a call one night from a brother union member, different union, but union representative from a different union. And he said, do you ever get a call, or do you represent any plants where this particular attorney represents? And I said, yes, I got 5 of them right here in town. He said, do you ever get a telephone call from him? I said, the son of a bee, probably every night he will call and say goodnight or some stupid thing. But he'll always want to talk about the case that's going at that particular point in time. So he said, do me a favor. He says, when he calls you tonight or the next time he calls you, just, we haven't got to that stage yet, or come up with an excuse where you're not going to talk to him about and he'd almost beg you to give you the information. Went into the negotiations that day or a couple days, 3 days later, and the man talked all day long about his successes at the table. Never mentioned, because he didn't know, I assume he didn't know, how to handle the negotiations that the employer was paying for. And as a matter of fact, I had him fired from 3 different places.
Really?
Yeah. It was very easy to do. As a Grand Lodge representative and a business representative, which represents the individual locals, and they vote, the individual locals vote in their representative. If that business representative needs time off or whatever, and I was available, as any Grand Lodge rep, we would be ordered to fill in. So this particular day, the representative had something to do, and it made no difference to me, but he didn't show up. So what it was he was in a hard problem that he didn't know how to get out of.
Mm.
But so I used the only gun that I knew how to shoot. And when we started off, we had our greetings and so on and so forth. Everything was very friendly. And then when he ran out of things to talk about, where's that so-and-so representative? He says, son of a, he's supposed to be here. This issue has to be settled today. We're not going to carry this on and go. Oh, and he just rambled on and on and on and on, act like an idiot. Well, like an idiot. When he got done talking, I said, Herb, you should have remembered our conversation last night because you asked me that question and I gave you the answer. Management sitting there, what the hell is he calling me, questioning me for? That was the end of his days.
Wow.
It was too bad to have to get rid of him because we still had him in 3 or 4 other plants.
Really?
But he knew that he had the business rep to begin with, so he very seldom ever got me. But when he got me, he didn't play any games.
Okay.
It's amazing why companies hire people that they don't know what they're doing, on their own. They talk about the union selling out to the company,
Mm-hmm.
and the company attorney is selling out to their salary. It's just because he isn't the only one that I've caught like that.
Really?
But if I have the same gun that I had with this Herb, I'll shoot it because I didn't owe the attorneys anything, and they wasn't paying any part of my salary. The membership that I was there to represent had to be represented.
Well, let me ask you, let's go back again to you being president of Local Lodge 1574. Do you know how long you were president of that local?
I'm going to say that I didn't serve very long when I got the telephone call.
Okay. And just, from some of the stories you've told me, maybe you've said it, but let me ask you anyway. Were the Portland Copper Tank Works a pretty easy company to be organized with, or?
Well, they was organized and went there, so I have no idea.
So, okay. So so as president of that local, you never really had to deal with them being unfriendly to the labor union, or?
They was I'll say fairly easy in negotiations because any representative, at least in my opinion, knows pretty much of when they squeeze the orange, how much juice there is left in it. And the big issue naturally is the benefits, the insurances, the salaries and pensions and things like that. And those are hard items to threaten with a strike because they are so costly that the company in some cases probably, and I don't know this for a fact, but the companies may decide they'd rather shut down than not be able to make a profit because they've already signed contracts of what they're going to sell the product for. And if the union is put them in a basket where they can't get out, then we've lost members because we've lost the company. I only had that happen just once. And I wasn't a representative. I was at the table. And I didn't particularly care for the reason that I'll say I didn't particularly care for any of the way that the representative talked to the company. Because you can't go in supposedly on your hands and knees and start right off that there's no reason for you to use the 2-letter word because the 2-letter or 3-letter word is the only one we're going to accept. We want only yes out of you and nothing else. And there's is representatives that just hasn't learned that little stunt yet, that how that should work. You don't find it very often that a representative doesn't know that. That if should have to come up pretty fast. That he hasn't learned everything that there is to be known about, especially negotiations.
Okay, and you have a piece of paper here that mentions your first arbitration. So would you be a special rep at that point when you were going to arbitration?
It was arbitration, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get on the right page here. And what was your question again?
Well, it's just so you talked a minute ago about, the story you told a minute ago about being at the arbitration table and the guy admitting that he was calling you at home and in the company. So, but this seems to be a different, this seems to be about a union sister with 5 years of seniority facing a layoff.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, do you want to, now, and let me try to get the timeline. So you were president at your local, and then you, at some point became you were the president of, is it the New England or the Northeast Conference of Machinists?
Northeast Conference of Machinists.
Okay.
And that only met twice a year. And that was one of the reasons why the time-wise, there could be a difference of when certain things happen, because there was a lapse of the 6 months. So
okay.
That's why that I couldn't remember whether the wagon came first or the horses.
Okay. And was it during that time that you were asked to be a business rep?
No, I was local lodge president in that particular case.
Okay.
And the reason for it, because I went after the business representative for putting me in the box, and he says, well, you learned real well or something, so why are you harassing me? Because I really was mad that he didn't tell me beforehand that I was going to handle the case. But his argument happened to be legitimate. He says, you know it inside and out, and I don't. You know, so go where the best chance to win.
Well, so then this arbitration case with the union sister, was that when you were still at the
Portland Copper?
Okay, so you were president at that point. Do you want to tell us that story?
I was a special, actually, I think at that particular point.
So you were still president, but you were also a special rep at the same time. Okay, it confuses me sometimes that the way you can kind of hold two positions at once, that it's not necessarily like a move up, that sometimes they coincide. So forgive me for that, but it's hard unless you work for the union. It's hard to know what all the levels are. So tell me about this arbitration. It sounds interesting.
Well, this one happened to be a woman, very well qualified in her work assignment, which was heliarc welding. Heliarc welding is taking about the size of a pen and welding. She was clever enough, she could take kitchen aluminum foil and weld it together.
Okay, wow.
That was her type of capability. Yeah, so consequently, you know, she was worth protecting, because companies like to have people do their business. They may not like the person, but they like the work that they. Well, in this particular case, this man was a native of the state of Maine, and he went down to work for the aircraft in Hartford.
Okay.
Can't think what the name of it is. Anyway, the man wanted her, or his wife or something, wanted to move back to Maine. So when he applied for for employment, he put down that he had something like 16, I don't remember the exact number, but it's immaterial, the story is the same, weld certifications. And because at Pratt and Whitney, that was the company. They had multiple types of metals that I never heard tell of before, that they used in aircraft and so on and so forth. But he was certified to weld on these 16 different types of metal. And she hadn't been certified in that because our company didn't require, they didn't even have any of the metal in stock. But she did have 3 weld certifications. So it became time for hiring him, and they wouldn't let hiring someone to hire, or they decided they needed him more than they did her. I don't know what their thought was, but anyway, I'll say that was their thought. A man that had all of these certifications, that would allow them to at least bid on the job, whether they got it or not. So anyway, they decided that she had, I don't remember years service, but a hell of a lot more than he had, and it didn't make any difference if she only had 1 day more than him. She had the seniority. And so we went to arbitration, and the business representative, when the arbitrators wanted to know who was going to represent, the business representative sent Roger Hare. Now, he never said a word to me, and I had never attended arbitration other than 1 case, and I had no idea what to do. I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention to more of the arguments that was on the table at that time. So anyway, I wasn't going to expose or try not to expose anything, but the arbitrator straightened me out 3 times on a couple of issues. But anyway, I presented an appropriate case, but the problem that they had with the case is they wanted to decide to lay her off because they knew what they needed for welders, and he had a gold mine and she had a little bit of silver, and so anyway, it all ended up that they put her on the layoff list, and she went out. And then the committee came to me, the in-house committee, the union committee came to me, and no, I was working there. I keep getting confused on this particular one because it's the only one that I handled that where I wasn't a representative. So anyway, I did have enough information that from the standpoint of the contracts, all I had to do was refer to that, and I had that one right down pat. So anyway, the arbitrator ruled that they had to, because of her seniority over him, she had, I'll say, 7 years and he had 1 day at that time. The arbitrator ruled that she had to go to the weld lab and learn and receive 13 more weld certifications. So that was the end of the arbitrator's decision. So she came to me one day and she says, Roger, she says, you've got to get me out of the weld lab. She says, we only get metal of 3 different types here. And there's no way that I can continue to just practice on these metals when this isn't what they want. Because it's metal that they don't need, so they don't buy any of it. So I went up to the office and said to the same guy that hired me, he was the personnel manager, and I said, Roger, we're going to have some trouble here if you don't put her back on the job. And he says, do you know I was about ready to come and ask you? Well, having the arbitrator's decision, and I don't know if I interpreted it right or wrong, but anyway, I was fighting on the merits of the case versus the arbitrator's decision was that she had to be taught. Now, we were asking it because the company was going to throw it to us. They were asking us to throw the thing out, even though I was the one that made the initial approach. I didn't know then, and I assumed that I had to make a pretty fast decision, that the arbitrator's decision is final and binding. And if it isn't adhered to, then it can go as far as the court. Now, I didn't think that I had the power to negotiate beyond the arbitrator's decision. So consequently, they agreed to put her back on a real production job, and the company guaranteed me that they wouldn't report it, that that we had requested this or anything else. The thing died just the instant that they said, we'll take her back and we will give her the top pay, which she wasn't getting. We will extend her seniority of the time that she was out. Things come out real well for all of us. I mean, I ended up by looking good in the shop because sometimes when in the shop, some of the members, if they know about a case and if they like the person that's the grievant, sometimes they're pretty pleased when they can go back into the shop and say, "Hey, we won that one." And I'd like to have them say it too.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's hard for a representative, in my opinion, because sometimes he has to take cases that he really shouldn't win. To this day, I don't think that the case that I won, because I won on a non-related. You follow what I mean?
Are you talking about the pea factory?
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. Yeah. They
No pun intended.
As I said, I told him right to his face. I said, "You son of a bee, you're not entitled to this, but you got it. And you better take good care of it, or the next time I'm not going to be here. And he can't order me here because I have a boss."
Right.
Yeah, everything seemed to come out all right, but it went through the plant pretty fast that he had won his case. But there's only about a couple of times where I kind of regretted that because it almost allows people to think that the union controls the company to the extent that they can get away with anything.
Right.
And I don't agree with that. There has to be discipline somewhere. And when it comes to the workforce, I don't think that the workforce should be doing things that they know is wrong just to challenge the system. I haven't had too many of them. I can't think of another one such as that one, because I thought that one was, and I had let out the venom, and the only person that should have heard it was the guy that caused the problem. But it so happened, by the way, that it was the same company that I told the story about a few minutes ago with the peas. I don't know. Let's go.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. So at this point, because I know when you were with the Turnpike, you signed a union card, and then it sort of, then the company turned against you, let me finish my question. And so then you went to the Portland Copper Tank Works and joined the union, and it seemed to be, you seemed to have it, you were reluctant, but then you had to because it was a closed shop. But then you seemed to have a change of heart and really really sort of take on personally that message that there is power in the union. And what appealed to you about running for leadership? I mean, what did you? I mean, you made the joke earlier, right? That you have a big mouth, and so that's why. But what was in it for you personally? Because that's a lot of work.
Uh, the only thing that I can say to that is that again I fought for something right and won. I don't know if that answers your question, but I got no more money. I didn't get praise from the headquarters. As a matter of fact, there's another story there that I'm not sure that I want to put onto the tape, because I got a letter of reprimand from the union because a company wrote, the company where I settled a grievance made a bad mistake. They wrote the company after I had settled the case.
You mean the union? The company wrote the union.
The what?
Did the company write the union after?
The company wrote the union,
Okay.
the headquarters.
Okay.
And was more than probably 24 hours, I got a telephone call for the, I would be discharged if they had received another letter requesting my services, because I wasn't working for the union. It was for my own personal grandization. Is that a proper word? Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it's self-serving. In other words, I'm promoting myself rather than the union. Well, that was the company wanted a man, fired him because he was drunk and took a gun into the shop and threatened to kill a supervisor. And the case had been pending argued back and forth for probably 9 months to a year. And the representative that was servicing the plant had a heart attack. So I was assigned in, and it was on the Canadian side. The plant was on the American side, I guess, and the office was on the Canadian side. And neither side, the union or the company, offered me a copy of the contract before I got in there. So consequently, I went in blind. So I started off by asking the company if they had exhausted the arbitration procedure, and the answer was no. We don't have any clause for arbitration. So I didn't know how to handle the case, other than the fact that I had handled a case identical to it. Not identical, because one ended up being dead and the other one wasn't. It was a different plant, different state, and Canada was a different country. But the employee, and I'm talking about the only case that I'd handled, the employee, the company wanted and needed. He was an excellent employee, above average when he was working, apparently. But when he got drunk, he still felt as though that he should go into the shop. And so I decided, as a spirit of the moment, I'm just looking into space, decided that I was there with all the knowledge in the world and how we're going to get out of this. So I suggested to the company, how about having the union approach AA, Alcoholics Anonymous? And if the officers of AA will give you a report of this individual's progress, at least to the point when they feel as though that he's dry, that you'll take him back. So the company agreed to it instantly. And in that particular case, the man went back onto the job, dry, and he stayed dry. It worked. I was in hopes it was going to work the second time. All the company, by the way, had their attorney with me, and my hesitation in that case was I was on the Canadian side, and I didn't know if we were negotiating Canadian law or American law, or how you could get around that if there's going to be a real dispute over it. So consequently, if they gave me the story, and they would like to have had him back, but they was going to take him back as an alcoholic. And I agreed with it, that they had no business. So that was his personal doing. So I told him this story of what I had done in Maine. So they sent us out for a couple of hours, and it was lunchtime anyway. But they sent me off property to write up what this whole thing would have ended up with. And I had my wife and kids with me, and my wife wrote up the story, whatever words that had to be taken down, she put on a piece of paper, gave them to the company, and the company instantly accepted it. Mm-hmm. The lawyer rejected it. Not there, but after we left, the company, and they called me and told me that the lawyer was very much against it. But they was going to take the man back under the terms that I had set up. And the man went 3 months and apparently never violated the rule. And the company took him back. The second week, first day on the job, first day of that second week, went into the plant, stoned out of his gourd, had his gun, was going to shoot the supervisor. So at that point, they had got the police in and got the man out, and apparently locked him up and let him dry out. But the following day or following night, they found him underneath a bridge where he had shot himself.
Oh no!
So that was the end of that case. But in the letter, they had thanked me for resolving the case to their satisfaction. I mean, it had to be, or they would have written a letter, I guess. And in there, they promised the office, if I could come back and negotiate the next contract, which would be 3 years later, they would give me an arbitration clause of the union's approval without challenge, unheard of. But we had a standard one that was past every legal term or for justification. We met everything. And that's when I got the telephone calls, when I got that letter.
Really? What were they upset about?
Well, they called it, and I'm almost positive I'm pronouncing it right, was this aggrandization.
Aggrandizement? Aggrandization?
What was it?
Aggrandizement?
Yeah, aggrandizement. Okay. Sorry,
Yeah, no.
You got to remember you're talking a little bit screwy here. I may have a hard time to remember a lot of this, but that's all the truth. I'm telling you, I'm not making this up.
Right.
But that was, and I still have the letter, by the way. No, I don't have the letter, because there was a telephone call, and the reason for it I found out later, years later, that he didn't want to make a record of it because it was the boss AA, administrative assistant, and he was subject to tipping the bottle himself. So I think he was probably half crocked, and because the guy really liked me. He gave me some great assignments. Yeah. So he wouldn't have done that if he didn't feel as though that I had done. But he was just putting the needle to me.
Okay.
That's what I ended up by thinking that would happen.
Okay. Well, we've been talking for a little over an hour and a half, so let's take a little break and then we'll come back and talk about you moving up to special rep. We've already covered a little bit of that, but we'll start with that. How about it? Oh, just in time. Okay, we are back after a short break and we are going to talk about you becoming a special rep to the Grand Lodge.
Well, as I've already told you in the earlier part, that when the first time that I was introduced to the international president, which I thought was a little bit rude of the business rep of not introducing us earlier, but as I said, we had some money in the district, so we took the officers out to a clam bake.
But before that, you've got a great story about two people being disrespectful to the international president.
Oh, he was the outgoing president.
Okay.
And he was followed by, I think he was the Secretary Treasurer at that time of the conference. And what was to me, now this is self-serving now. To me, what was interesting was the president got a great applause, when he was bad-mouthing and the secretary did the same thing. So when I made my presentation by closing with it's kind of too bad that you don't learn to do your job before you agree that you're going to do your job. And I get a standing ovation. But again, as I said, as far as when I said that, people just scattered, including the international president and his staff. Staff meaning he had one Grand Lodge representative with him, and they had found someone, a friend or something, that it may have been the business representative when the three of them left anyway. And I met him probably an hour and a half later over in Cape Elizabeth and that's a great place for all kinds of seafoods. And they had a shore dinner, which is Maine potatoes, corn on the cob, clam chowder, or haddock chowder, anything seafood that was on the table. That's what we had for lunch. And then, as I've already said, as they got up to leave, the officers just lined up and shook hands with him. And when he got to me, he just said, "I'll be talking to you later." And it was 2 weeks, and it wasn't him. And why, or what I said that impressed him, is a mystery to me, because what I said in his behalf, he should have stayed in Washington. He had to have taken that, I guess, as something of importance to him,
Mm-hmm.
because he was a great president as far as I was concerned. I never called, I never called, by the way, before I became a staff member. But when I called, that isn't true. That isn't true. That's how I got the representatives in the first place. They had to be approved by him, but I never talked to him. I'll leave it. He had an assistant that always covered his office calls. And I sound confused on that. I'm really not confused. It was just the way that it came out of my head. But anyway, as I said, 2 weeks after My special rep expired. I got the letter that I was assigned permanently, and I continue to collect a paycheck. But it was more of an honor, in my opinion, because I'd never done anything of too much importance to anyone except myself prior to that. I mean, by that, I was vocal at meetings if I thought that something was being discussed that wasn't for the best interest of members, because sometimes they would want to schedule meetings to have parties, at the local expense, or have meetings more often, or something of that nature. And it never happened, to my knowledge, anyway. And even today, if they still have them, it's every 6 months. But and again, the only reason for it is it's their exchange, which is to me very interesting. For the local areas, in other words, New England area, to find out what jobs are available, because they come in with, if the officers do their homework before they get to the meeting, it's pretty well set up. They're going to talk about what's available for jobs, what plants are moving, where there's a possibility of an organizing campaign, things of that nature that they bring to the meeting with them. That's what the meeting is for, is to exchange. For an example, there was a company probably 5 years ago, and I heard about it at one of the meetings that I was visiting, that it was a very, it wasn't a very popular company, or by name anyway, until all of a sudden we found out that it was a national company. Mm. And they had plants in different states. So the international, I don't know how they made up, because I never followed up on it, whether they won the election or even had an election. But it was a large company. So if the New England Conference mentioned that at their last meeting, there's a pretty good chance that there was an organizing campaign run in one of our 6 states. And that's what keeps the union going, is the organizing.
So what is the New England Conference? Which states are those?
What states?
Yeah.
Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island.
Vermont. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So he followed up with a call 2 weeks later.
Did I what?
We had started talking about when you got the call from the Grand Lodge to be a special rep.
No, the call was after the 6 months was up.
Okay.
That I hadn't received.
Oh, okay.
The title.
Okay.
And my wife thought that I was going to quit. Mm-hmm. But because of that 15-minute being late and the discharge, mm-hmm. I just decided I'm going to stay on, because it sounded reasonably to me that they must have wanted me around, or they wouldn't have sent me to Washington for a week, mm-hmm. for training. And so what we did is we went through the Constitution, what rights we were. We talked about contract. It was, as I said, to my knowledge, it was the very first training program that they ever had for the Grand Lodge staff. Mm-hmm. Ordinarily, they would take people out of the shop that had been recommended or whatever, and they might have checked into them, found out that they had the union's interest at heart, and that's how they hired. Just passing along what other Grand Lodge representatives may have recommended. Because I don't think that I was recommended by anyone. may have been, but I don't know what it would have been because I hadn't met that many Grand Lodge reps.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that our business rep thought that I was going to replace him, so he may have submitted my name to someone. But I got the job and loved it.
Well, how did your responsibilities change once you went on as special rep?
Actually, nothing, because I think that the special rep is they follow fairly close because most cases there's a business rep that can make up a report. He has this amount of knowledge because you don't have to sit too long with a union representative to find out, for an example, how much they know about the law. Because the National Labor Relations Act is the controlling factor, really. The unions can't violate too many of the laws. They're supposed to represent people and to the best of their ability, and there's laws where they just can't play games, which is controlled again by the government. The government controls everything. But
So how long were you special rep before you became a Grand Lodge rep?
well, that was my whole point.
Mm-hmm.
I was appointed for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the 6 months, I hadn't received the letter.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks after I had supposedly my special rep time had run out, 2 weeks after that is when I got the letter.
Okay. Oh, I understand now.
When I got the letter that I had been permanently appointed.
Okay. And how long were you a Grand Lodge rep?
I can't tell you that, but it must have been at least 20 years or more anyway.
So if you retired, we did the math earlier.
I was going to say we could do the math on it because we have it somewhere here.
You retired at 65, so we decided that was in 1985.
And I went on 61,
not
right?
85. It might have been a little earlier than that. So then you were Grand Lodge rep in the early 60s through the early 80s, and you retired out of that position.
Yeah.
And at that time, did you have to move to Washington, D.C., or did you stay here in Maine?
No, before I retired, I had to move to Washington because I was appointed as a National Labor Relations Board representative for that particular area, and the office was there, and so I ended up by going to Washington, and for about a year and a half, I think, and that was during that period of time was when I lost my bride. She had 23 little malignant tumors in her head, and her niece, as a matter of fact, last week was operated on in Portland for a cancer in her head.
And earlier in the interview, you said that her mother had died.
I didn't hear you.
Earlier in the interview, well, you said that your mother and her mother were roommates.
No, it was her niece. My wife and her niece both had, of course, my wife has died, and they expected her to just a matter of time. She's on chemo, but I've never heard tell of brain cancer ever being cured, but anything, especially chemo.
Right. So at that time, I guess all of your children were grown then, and were all your by the time you retired, all your children were adults
they
and out of it.
I have my youngest son lives with me.
Okay. Okay.
He works for LL Bean. Did you ever hear tell of them?
Yeah.
He works for them.
Everybody knows about LL Bean.
Well, they make sure of that. They're non-union though.
Really?
I'm trying to get him, but I don't think anyone's ever tried because it's a fairly well-run, disciplined company.
Mm-hmm. So some of these. This is a story where you were assigned to replace.
There could be duplicates there.
There are, where you were assigned to replace a representative servicing a plan in Vermont. Do you remember?
Well, that was the one that I just told you about the guy that shot himself under the bridge.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. Okay, I see. Further down. But I know there's also information in here about being involved with the Maine senior movement. So I guess after retirement, you came back to Maine. You came back here to South Portland.
Yep.
And are there any active retirees groups for the union here?
Is there any?
Yeah, are there any here?
Yeah. Well, you should interview Maria Cardoni on that one because the machinists, for some reason or other, the staff has had apparently a retiree organization for years where they paid dues in. Mm-hmm. And when I got involved in it, Maria called and suggested that we see if we could set up a meeting in Maine. So this fellow with a brother that is expired, a Grand Lodge rep, Bill Lehman, he and I had attended one meeting of the National Council of Seniors. And we, our past international president, George Corpius, at that time was the head of the president of the National Council. And as a matter of fact, he was the one that appointed Maria as his go-between as such. And we both, Bill and I, felt as though that and agreed with Maria that we should try it. So we put a newspaper story out. Bill did. He liked to write for the newspapers, and he put a newspaper story. We was expecting. I can't remember, but I think we made arrangements for 75 because it was a luncheon meeting. We ended up with 125, and.
Did you have to turn people away, or did you have room for everybody? Or
no, we just took let them come in, and it just so happened there was enough food to go around. I mean, it was a buffet because we couldn't afford it, to have a sit down. Mm-hmm. But it just expanded tremendously. And then when the main council of not the main council, the state employees unions. When they come in, as a matter of fact, they was in with us, but it's what they did is made the arrangements for the meeting hall, which we didn't know until we were told, mm-hmm. And they was the ones that paid for the meal, that for the main municipal union really went heavy for it. I haven't attended a meeting for quite some period of time because I gave up driving 4 years ago.
Okay.
I did it on my own. I did. Wasn't suggested. It was.
You just felt it was time?
Well, did you ever panic? I mean, really panic?
Not in a car, but yeah.
Well, you know what happened? I had a Chevrolet wagon, and the first time that it happened, I went to the Teamsters Hall to attend a meeting, and I was going to back in between two cars, put my foot on the brake, and no brakes. Do you remember in the news about the problems with brake failures, but when they changed over to that whatever they call the new braking system, where if one wheel is on ice, for an example, and it freezes up, then they'll all freeze. In other words, it's supposed to, and it has saved a lot of lives. Anyway, I went into the meeting, come out, and drove the car for a couple, 3 months. No problems. And then all of a sudden one day I went over town to get a haircut. Come out of the barber shop, got into the car, made 4 turns, streets, no problem stopping, starting, or anything else. Started down a hill and no brake. Well, down at the end of the hill was a bridge that had a number of streets leading onto that bridge, so there was quite a lot of heavy traffic. And I was the luckiest person on earth because I had to go through 2 traffic lights. They were timed perfect for me. When I get down to the bridge itself, I thought sure that I was going to hit someone or someone was going to hit me because there was no traffic signal. And I got through that mess of cars, pulled over and stopped, let the car stop because it still had no brake. And I was wondering what I was going to do, and I finally decided, well, Shaw's, the grocery store, is the other side of the bridge. I'll see if I can get over into their parking lot and then call up a wrecker. Got over to Shaw's, and I had to make a left turn, oncoming traffic, put my foot on the brake, thinking sure that I was a dead duck in line for him. But it so happened I had plenty of space, and the brakes did work. So I decided to drive it home, which I did, took it to the garage. They said, you needed something that cost me $1,000 for something I didn't need because it was a master cylinder that they put on for the $1,000. And that was the second time. The third time that it happened, I took my great granddaughter and her mother to a restaurant in South Portland, and I was pulling in behind his car just as he was coming out of the restaurant, elderly gent, and he kept walking. And the first thing that popped into my mind was I could ram on the brakes, and I had no brakes to ram on. But he was smart enough to apparently recognize that I was in trouble because he took the last step backward off the curb. He could see that I was coming. And if he had taken one more step, in my opinion, I would have taken both of his legs off because my car went under his car. 2 bumpers, you know what I mean? That looked to me. But I was parking, so consequently I wasn't doing probably 3 or 4 miles an hour.
But that's still so scary.
But, and that didn't bother me at all. Went home and was telling my daughter about it. Okay, let's go to Shaw's to do some shopping. We got about maybe 3/4 of the way there, no problem. And all of a sudden, I had my very, very first, whatever it was.
A panic attack?
Oh, Jesus. I was literally out of my mind. I couldn't think, I couldn't see, I couldn't even move the steering wheel. I did move enough to stop the car right in the middle of the traffic, and it was on the inside lane of a 4-lane highway. Get out of the car and says, Maureen, you're going to have to drive it. I can't do it. Never touch the wheels. Well, that isn't true. I've done that now for during the winter because I have to move the car so I can plow. But beyond the driveway, but in the driveway, I've had 3 panics over the past 4 years.
And it's stemmed from just having
guessing
brake failure and not knowing what was going to happen.
I'm guessing, so this, the reason, the way that I drive is 1 foot on the brake, which you shouldn't do, and the other one on the accelerator. But I only have to move, maybe 100 feet. But I've gotten out of the car twice and left it, not bothered to plow the driveway.
Really?
Wait till my son to come home. So I figured it was my time because I did one hell of a lot of driving when I was working for Portland Copper Tank Works, when I became a truck driver. And then after I retired, the one trip this Bill Lehman I just got telling you about, he and I was ordered to take our cars to Florida for a staff conference because we was going to supply the executive board with cars or be their chauffeurs while we were in Florida. Cars never moved an inch for a week. Wasn't we some mad? All of that mileage.
And then the time that's a 2.5 day trip, depending on 3 if you're going all the way to Miami.
Yeah, well, that's where we went. I can't remember if it was Miami or Daytona. Makes no difference. We had the staff conference anyway, but all of that miles traveling behind each other.
Did y'all have a CB?
No.
Radio to keep in touch, or like walkie-talkies or something?
No.
Oh, it would have been more fun. I imagine that was the time before cell phones, so.
Well, no, we didn't have that either, so.
Okay. Well, I don't think we've come quite to the end. Is there anything else you're doing, though, as a retiree, even if not actively with the union? Are there any other programs or things?
I used to attend meetings from, as a matter of fact, the last one that I was invited to, I think, was about 2 years ago. A retired Grand Lodge representative that used to be my boss, he called me and invited me to York, Pennsylvania to his staff, and it was just about the time that I gave up driving, and he said to fly, the district would, the retirees would pay for my flight, but I didn't think that I could contribute that much for them to pay that much money. I'd like to have gone. Still like to have gone. As a matter of fact, my son and I are planning 2 weeks, the 1st of October, I think it is. And we're going to be in that general area, and I'm going to call George, and if they have a meeting at a senior meeting, I will attend that one because I have a chauffeur, my son.
And what are these meetings for? Are they?
They're to let people know that there's other people out there that may be able to use their services.
Okay.
There is a number of things. If they're close enough, and if they're in good health and have a license, they can drive people that such as myself. I've never had anyone do that other than my family. But I'm sure that there's enough people around me that if I wanted to ask, that and it would be in most cases probably a housewife, but being home, there isn't too many retirees that I know of at this point that lives close to me, because they've heard about me, so they stay away. But they attend the National Council and make contributions. Contributions meaning what new ideas that they may have come up with for fundraising, such as a bean supper. Everyone knows how to do that. But
what's the bean supper? Is that a Maine thing?
No, it isn't necessarily a main thing. You don't eat beans at all for Saturday night.
but we never call. I mean,
well,
because we do like spaghetti suppers or
inexpensive.
fish fries or
anything that's inexpensive.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Because you see, seniors aren't loaded with money, and it's most people can raise enough money just by selling tickets in order to get people to come into the so we know what's going on, and it's a chance for just relationships that find out what else is going other than what's happening in your own home. But you get sick and tired of fighting with the kids all the time.
Yeah. Well, speaking of kids, you talked a little bit about your one son that lives with you, who works at LL Bean. The other kids, though, or did any of them ever join a union?
No.
No?
My middle daughter is the one that I forgot her name.
Mary.
She works as the secretary for the for the manager of the city of South Portland. My oldest daughter is a home care operator. She takes care of people in nursing homes, for an example. She has worked for a multi-millionaire for probably 12 years. Matter of fact, she just quit him and went to work for an outfit. They call them ambulances. They do have ambulances, but they have a number of station wagons. They call ambulances because they pick up druggies on the side of the street, and they're all take them to the detox.
Okay.
And that's a 24-hour operation. Well, it isn't 24-hour operation because they shut down at midnight, but they open up at 4:30 in the morning. And that's a costly operation for the state, because some of the damn fools, and I shouldn't call people that, but they carry the drugs after they go to detox, and they'll have a smoke on the way home. And there's nothing she can do about it. I mean, her orders are pick them up, take them to detox, and return them safely. Yeah, as a matter of fact, they just took over Cumberland County. They had York County, which is the most southern county we have. They've been doing that for some numbers of years, but now they have York County, so they're expanding. They get about 4 of the big ambulances, like that white one there by the lamppost. They've got 2 that is strictly for children, and it's Mrs. The president, the past president.
Laura Bush, the past president's wife. Laura Bush.
Lost.
Okay.
Can't even think. Bush.
Yeah. So Laura, her name was Laura.
Yeah. She bought 2, which they operate. strictly for kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're called trauma or something. But anyway, if someone calls and, on the road or it's for a kid, they have special ambulances to take care of them. Which is, of course, the company is making, needless to say, millions of bucks out of it. But anything that takes care of kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
So do you have two daughters or three?
Three.
Three daughters and two boys. So if your oldest,
two boys, I got
Two-
five.
yeah,
Five kids.
okay. So your oldest daughter, just
Maureen.
Maureen, and then who is is next in line is
Steve is the oldest, which I have him in,
Oh.
my son.
okay.
Then Maureen, Steve has his own business, by the way, which is cleaning banks,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very lucrative business. They get $25 an hour or something like that. I wish I hadn't thought of that and gone into business a long time
Right.
ago.
Well, and so that's
Then the other daughter is Mary, the one
Oh.
I couldn't remember the name of.
right.
And I've told you what she does. My third daughter is going to my son. He works for the LL Bean.
Okay.
And my third daughter is, I'm going to her house tonight for dinner. She works for Unum.
What's that?
It's an insurance company.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it's a international insurance company. It's got a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Susie is her name.
Susie?
Susan.
Susan. Okay.
Yeah.
So were they raised with the understanding that by you being in a union, it was helping them have maybe better opportunities than other kids might have? Or, I mean, was that because in some families I know, like grandpa was in the union, dad was in the union, the son, and so then multi-generation sort of have this idea of the union is good and the union is helping us have a better life and things like
Well,
that. So
none of them belong to a union, and the
Mhm.
reasons for it is one of the reasons for it is their particular companies. LL
Just-
Bean, for an example.
right.
I don't think that you could get anyone there
Right.
because they're treated very well.
So they just didn't have the opportunity given the careers they chose.
But yeah, and,
Okay.
and it's the same as with the Maureen with the ambulance country.
Mm-hmm.
Got tremendous benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Susan working for Unum, and she has the pleasure of covering practically the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, her particular job allows her to travel to satellite offices and talk to the staff or train the staff at that particular office if there's a new change.
Mm-hmm.
So I
But-
don't.
Well, and a lot of your stories that you talk about how you were either hungry or you didn't have a penny, until you had regular work. I mean, I guess, did you emphasize that because of the kind of work you did and that you were in a union, that they had it better than
No,
you did growing?
no.
So that was never really a thing y'all talked about.
Well, we would talk in the house, and I would talk about the cases and so on and so forth, and they very well know because, again, God bless my angel, she did such a really and truthfully tremendous job of bringing up these 5 kids, because they drive me nuts. I mean, they literally think that I belong to them, and I probably do, but they don't have to smother me, and I refuse to go to a doctor until at least 3 of them pile up on me.
Yeah.
But when I get the 3rd one, I stop arguing. I go, and I manage to have 2 of them go with me just so that they can hear what the doctor has to say, because they figure that when I come home, I'm not going to tell them the truth.
Right.
So, but no. But if they were working in an industry that in my opinion, there would be a ghost of a chance of getting in any union,
Okay.
I'd be the first one to lead them in.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, they're very happy as they are. They're making good money, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Okay. Can you think of anything we haven't covered that you would like to discuss related to your work with the machinist?
I can't think of anything because you have drained my brain of everything that's in it, and I thank you for your patience.
Ah, I'm happy to do.
But
Well, then let me ask you one last question. I'll drain the last little bit of what's left. What has been for you the most important thing about being in the union?
being successful in negotiations without a strike, and winning something that the membership is satisfied with.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that has satisfied members has made me float.
Okay.
It's and I have to tell you, I've had some losers, and that bothers me. It bothers me for the simple reason that either the member fails to cooperate or decides that they want to interfere in their own representation.
Mm-hmm.
And the only problem with that is they get angry. And there's one thing that I absolutely forbid anyone to get angry except me.
Mm.
Because I don't have to go back to work for the company if we win our
Right.
cause.
Right.
And besides, if I'm not giving them the proper representation, they should notify the organization to get rid of me, or move a different representative into that particular local. Very fortunately, that has never happened. And I've gone into locals where I shouldn't have been. Just if I was in the city or something and at night, what the hell do you do? Watch television, or would you go and play with your union members?
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been very, very well received. As I told you, I'm not going to name the states. I think I did once before, but I don't know if I was on the tape. I don't know of any representatives that had 3 separate states pay their expenses to come to a retirement party.
Mm-hmm.
And in one particular state, I didn't have a member. It was because I visited members when I was in and around that area. If there was a union meeting, I would go to it.
Mm-hmm.
If it was 50 miles away and I had nothing else to do, I'd take the ride.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a job, or had a job, that's well protected, and the members is the one that gave it to me. There may have been someone that hired me, but that doesn't mean that person gets any more out of me than any individual member.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've said, there's so many cases that needs good representation, and we have some unions, not the machinists, or at least that I know of in the machinists, that is not representing their people properly, because the machinist goes out of their way for training. They'll go to any local meeting and set up how to run a meeting, how to negotiate with the company, or sit at the table of the company. That's all important, because if they go in thinking that the louder they holler, the more they're going to be get attention paid to, and it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Because the other side can holler just as loud,
Mm-hmm.
and they control the works. Yes. They can put a lock on the door or any damn thing they want. You're looking for rain?
I know, it started raining, didn't it?
Well, you want to give up and call it quits? And
I think, well, I think we're kind of at the end of our interview anyway. Anything else you can think of? Or
No.
wrap it up?
There
Well,
was nothing in there. I thought that you was going to look at that one sheet there that had I wrote for retirees.
oh, the one for retirees here?
That's the one.
This one.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Well, you read it first and determine
Okay.
whether it is of any consequence to the purpose of this interview.
Oh, it's about staying active in politics and making sure that we.
Well, it may not even make sense. The best question is it something that could be meaningful to someone that.
I think if this is something that you took the time to write, that it is important for us to discuss here. To discuss. So, do you want to? The big question is, who are we, retirees, and what are we doing with our retirement years? That's your question.
Well, we have a lot of retirees that as I said, they're very active in their community. We try to encourage more people because as people retire, their lives, needless to say, changes tremendously. And if they find an activity that, such as helping their neighbors, it'll take them back, at least thinking of what it's like to forget your worries and look at the person that has something to really worry about. Health-wise, for an example, driving, there's just no end to the type of volunteer work that a retiree, and if some of them are very reluctant to, because they're not a good mixer. Those are the type of people that should get out, because if they want their life to be extended, as I do, for an example, I'm at the point where I have great-grandchildren. I have 3 great-grandchildren.
Oh, wow. Your children.
4th generation.
So there are 5 generations of Hares?
Yeah. 4,
Wow.
isn't it?
4.
It's me, my
Your
daughter,
children.
and their children.
Children. And then great-grandchildren. Okay.
As I said, in the way that this country is going, unfortunately, the poor is getting poorer. The people of need is getting less, and with some of, and the sad part of it is the same as I made reference to my daughter's work. I think that I don't know how they can do it, but there should be a law passed that the person that's being transported for drug treatment should be required to do something to repay the people that has to pay the bills for them. And even some employers could very well. But these type of people, when they once get the needle, and how they get the dope is a mystery. But that's something that must be done. And I'm done.
And you're done. So your concern is that if people are not staying active or politically active, then we're not leaving much for future generations.
Being involved in anything as far as seniors are concerned, whether they know it or not, it's going to keep them a little bit healthier
Mm-hmm.
just because of activity.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, I know, because when I cut out activity, my body just has gone to pieces. I cannot walk a straight line,
Really?
and that makes me real sad. Whose fault is it? Mine.
Mm.
Why is it my fault? Because I have failed to be more active. Just because I lost my license, I can't get around like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why everyone says, well, you don't look to be 87 years old. I'm not yet. I got another 30 days. But the point is that if I hadn't have decided to give up, I probably would have hurt someone bad, and that would have killed me, honestly and truthfully. And so I took the road that the only one that I know of is just give up driving, but I haven't decided or don't have the mentality to go on to pick up something that would keep me moving, something that I was really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in the senior movement, but you have to, in order to be in the senior movement, you have to participate, and I can't do that because I don't have mobility.
Your public transportation here doesn't offer a service for senior citizens to pick them up?
Who?
Like your local public transit system?
Well, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Actually, again, I haven't even attempted to reach out,
Okay.
and that's my fault. I mean, I can't criticize anyone for I blame doctors. Yeah, but the reason I blame doctors is, well, you didn't know about it, but I had a doctor call me this morning. I was on 4 different medicines, 4 different drugs, and had a different doctor give me the 5th drug. Went to the drugstore, and a druggist is probably maybe 35, 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at my screen before he gave me the drug. He said, oh my God, he says, you can't take this medicine.
Because it won't mix with the other medicine?
Yeah.
Okay.
It could have been deadly.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to the trouble of going on the computer, and apparently there is some form of a network on the computer that knows the mixtures of drugs and how it took him literally on the phone 20 minutes to find out if his diagnosis of the interaction between the interactions of drugs and what would happen to me, to wait for them to call him back. The line is apparently was so busy. But anyway, they did call him back, and they said under no circumstances
Wow.
should that medicine be. So it's what he did, and I took his advice. The new drug I stopped taking, or I never took. I didn't even buy the thing. Because Monday, it was going to be the day for me to do my work and check it out through my own doctor. My doctor called me at 6:30 this morning at home.
That's early.
And he made it very clear that the nurse that is going to be there at 4:30 or whatever time to change the bandages here, that she call him before she talks to me. I don't know what it's all about. I will when I get to see her. But the point is that he is pretty damn concerned. But it's a little bit late. If it hadn't been for that druggist, and he was emphatic because there was another one pharmacist that was working with him, another male was working with him, and they literally disagreed. But this particular guy stuck to his guns.
Mm.
And because of the argument with his partner is why that he called the drug center.
Okay. Okay, so part of it, like I think part of what you're trying to get at here is sort of advocacy, and then being like for retirees to also be smart about how they're being taken care of, and to ask the right questions, and to make sure every different doctor knows what every other doctor's doing and stuff like that.
Well, you see, they can do that simply because with the computers today.
Mm-hmm.
Because any computer that has my name, it's my understanding, any medical computer that has my name also is on every other computer if they want to type it in.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true,
Yeah, I'm not sure,
but
actually.
because I got so damn many doctors right now. I went 60 years. This is my closing statement.
Okay.
I went 60 years, and this is the gospel truth, without taking a drug stronger than an aspirin.
Now you're making up for lost time.
Well, it's what I'm doing is tearing up a lot of prescriptions too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if you had that type of luck. Did you ever go to a doctor's office and come out without a prescription for something?
Mm-hmm.
You have.
Mm-hmm.
Stay with that doctor.
Yeah.
I mean that seriously.
Yeah.
Drugs, it isn't a cure for everything.
No. You have to.
Thank you very, very
If
much
I'm
for
not
your
anything.
courtesy and understanding.
I was so happy to come here and get this interview. I'm sorry we lost the first one. I think this is a much better interview, and it's much longer too. We're just clocking in a little over 2.5 hours. So I will end the interview now. Thank you very much.
But who's
And
going to listen to it though when it...
you, everyone, your family, you have 5 kids, and you have grandkids, and you have great grandkids. They will all want, if no one else ever listens to this but me and you
You're
and
probably
them.
right. Well, I know of one, and that would be Maria.
Maria, and I want to get her interview too. Let me turn the recorder off really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.